Yeah, I guess that would help if I wasn't on mute. Okay. Anyway, what I was commenting was we wrote this little program that we're used to working with. So everybody should be familiar with this. We've written it more than once. But what I was asking was, what happens if I want to enter 100 grades, 50 grades, 200 grades? I don't want to have to sit and have grade 4, grade 5, grade grade 200 and enter in or have 200 input statements. I want the code to be a little cleaner than that, and I don't want to have to write that much code. So what we're going to work on today in Chapter 4 is how to do such a thing without explicitly one by one having all those statements. We're going to learn to do loops. Well, let's write a loop for this. Now there's a couple of different kinds of loops. We're going to cover them all today and then continue to work on them next week. The first one we're going to do is a counter while loop. Now for a counter while, what you do is you set the counter, you check the counter, you have to have a condition. All right, I wanted 3 grades here, so I want this to be 3. Read in. I will total it. And then I want to change the counter. Let's look at what that's doing. When I first enter the loop, counter's 1, so that's less than 3. So it comes and asks me what the grade is. It adds the grade to the total. And I need to increment the counter so I can get grade number 2. So now counter is 2, comes back up. Is counter less than 3? Yes. It reads another grade, adds it to the total, and it increments counter again. It comes back up. Is counter less or equal to 3? Yes. It reads in a grade, adds it to the total. It adds 1 to counter. Now counter is 4. Is counter less than or equal to 3? No. It stops. It comes down here, and then it does the other work I want it to do. Now, as we've learned before, if I run something like this, start that one over again. There we go. I get this error message. It's telling me total is not defined. Now, when I've seen that before, what we've decided to do is always go up there and define it. And the reason it's not defined is because I came down here and I said, take whatever's in total and add it to grade. When this wasn't here, there wasn't anything in total, so it didn't know what to do. Now it started off with 0, so it's saying add 0 to the grade or grade to the 0. And then after that, I have a running total. Okay, so if I run this, I did 3 grades and it gave me an average. Now notice what the counter while did. You set the counter, you check the counter, and you change the counter. All right. If I didn't do this, what would happen? Just keep going, right? Because counter 1 is always less than or equal to 3. So that would have been an infinite loop. When this stuff, pardon? Somebody have a question? Okay. So if you get this type of run and it just won't stop, you know that you haven't done something to your counter. Here we're adding 1 to counter. That's why it's called a counter while. It counts up. Well, it can count backwards as well, but it counts until the condition is met. So when you do a counter while, you have to set the counter, check the counter, change. That's what that is. Set, check, change. Now, if you'll just kind of remember this algorithm, then you can just plug this in for the things that you need, and then the stuff in the middle might change a little bit with what you're trying to do, but the counter itself will work the same. All right. Let's write another one. I want to add 5 days worth of sales. Okay. Now, once again, I'm adding something, so I know I'm going to need a total variable. I have 5 days, so I know that I could count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 5 days. Now, I can say less than or equal to 5, or I can say less than 6, right? Either one of those will be fine. I want to read in the sales. This is money, so it'll be float. The total. And the next thing I have to do is change the counter. So I'm going to come in here and I'll add 1 to counter. I'm done, we'll print. Oops. I'm done, we'll print the sales. I won't format them right now or anything. Okay. Let's take that out, run that, see where we stand. So we'll have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. There you go. Okay. A counter while is really easy. Just remember the algorithm. Just kind of keep this in your, your head file of short ways to write your algorithms, okay? And you'll have it there when you need it. So counter while always counts. Okay. Let's rewrite this and let's ask the user to enter the cells for day 1, enter the cells for day 2, and so forth. Okay. Let me copy that. All right. So what I'd like for it to say is enter cells for day. And I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I already have something that can do that for me. That's counter. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say counter. Okay. And then I'm going to put my colon so it look nice. Okay. And that's too many. Now let's just see what happens when we do that. Oh, well, you got to move that over. There you go. Okay, so the first thing it complains about is, what are you trying to do? You're trying to print a number and a string. Remember, this plus sign is concatenation or an addition. If it's addition, they have to be 2 numbers. If it's concatenation, it has to be 2 strings. And I'm trying to mix a string and a number, and that's not going to let me do it. But what I can do is I can change this number to a string. Okay. Now I'm concatenating a string, and a string. So let's see what I have now. All right, day 1, 10, 40, 50, and there we go. Okay. All right, so if I want to change a number to a string, just convert it, str. Works the same if you want to change strings into numbers, and we'll get to that later. Okay. All right, any problems with that? So if I leave off the change, I'll have an infinite loop, and I won't have a way to get out of it. Don't forget, you've got to have total equals 0 because I'm totaling up everything. Okay. Whiles are fairly easy. Okay. Once you kind of understand the basic set, check, and change. Well, counter whiles are easy, especially because you know how many there are. I knew there were 3 grades, there were 5 days. I knew exactly how many I needed to count to. If I don't know that, what do? I don't know how many times to run the loop. Well, there's a couple of things. You could ask the user, right? So if I came in, I could come in here and I could ask equals, and we could get it for how many days or something like that. And then I could put, right? I could put that there, and I better make this number not the same. Yeah. There you go. Okay. So I still have my counter, but now I've read in how many they want to do, and I just use that for my condition. So there's one way, all right? Sometimes the user doesn't know how many they want. They know they have a whole bunch, they just haven't counted them. So we could do something like this. I have my total, and then I can have a variable. And I could just say, as long as they keep telling me to go, then I'll keep asking. Okay? So we could go on and ask. And then I ask them, do you want to keep going? I'm going to just print total. Now that works. Yourself. Oh. No. Do this over again. There. Okay. I should have had a colon here to make it nice, but other than that, all right. So this lets the user enter as many or as few as he or she wants if they don't know how many there are. Now this type of while loop is basically called a sentinel or a flag loop, because I'm looking for the flag or sentinel yes or no, depending on how you want to look at it. Okay. I could have just as easily have said, well, I'll keep going, not equal no, but either way is fine. Okay. So this way, I let the user tell me when he's ready to quit, and he doesn't have to know how many there are like he had to know up here. Okay. But notice when I did the sentinel, I had to set it, I had to check it, and then I had to read it to see what the user wanted me to do. Okay. So I had to set it somehow, I had to check it, and then I had to read it somehow from the user. Okay. The only thing I didn't get to do was print what day of the sales it was, day 1, day 2, day 3. I could still do that, okay? Especially if I wanted to do average sales. I would have to know how many days there were before I could do the average, right? That's just another counter. So I'd have to come in here and I'd have to say, okay, day equals 0. This is going to be our count of days. As long as I read in 1, I'm gonna say day equals day plus 1. I've read 1, that's 1 day. If I come back around and he says yes, I read another one, that's another day. That's day 2. Okay? So I could do average that way. But if I wanted to use the counter in here, I'd have to play with that a little more, right? I could print something like that, enter sales for day. Okay. I could use day here. But I would need to put it, but have one to print, right? Yeah. So I could do that. So they want to continue. I'll add 1 to the day, and I'll say enter sales for day 1. I'll total it up, and I'll say you want to do it again. If they do, I'll add day 2 and print day 2. Okay. So there's any combinations of these counters and totals that you can run to get the exact statement that you want to get. Okay. The trick is knowing which loop to use. And that's really easy. If you know how many, you use a counter while. I knew there were 5. I knew there were 3. If you don't know how many, you have to use a sentinel or a flag while because you don't know how many you should loop. You have to depend on the user to tell you. Okay. Another flag a little bit differently. And this time what we'll do is we'll enter in so what we've done is we've set it. We've set sales. We're going to check it. Sales not equal to minus 99. In fact, up here, let's say enter minus 99 to quit. Okay. As long as he doesn't enter minus 99, this loop is going to run. Now, you want to pick a number for your flag that would not be a valid number for sales. Hopefully, you wouldn't have any negative sales. They'd always be positive. Okay. You'd come in here and you would then add it to the total. Okay, so we've got set here. We've got the check. We have to do another read. So we would just copy that same one there. When you're done, you print the total. Okay. Notice they all really work the same. It's just a matter of, do you want to use a flag of some kind, or do you know how many there are? All right, so we had 10, 20, 30. I'll quit. Oh, I typed in the wrong number. Now that's tricky, so you better make sure you don't. Yeah, there you go. And that's why I'm negative, because I typed in the wrong sentinel value. Okay. In a real program, obviously, we try to catch that. But you can assume when I do the homework checks that I type in valid data. You don't have to check for anything. Okay. All right. So we have a counter while that lets me count. And we have the sentinel flag while that lets the user kind of tell me and guide me through what they want to do. Okay. But no matter which one, it's kind of basically the same if you're going to do an accumulator of totals. You always have to set a total. You always have to add to it. Okay. You've always somehow got to change your flag or your counter by either reading in or adding to it or subtracting. You can go backwards in a loop if you wanted to. Okay. All of those. By use which loop. All right. explicitly. There's 10, there's 20, there's 100. If you don't know how many, use a sentinel flag. Okay. So if the problem is worded like, you need to add up an unknown number of integers. The minute they said unknown, you know it has to be a sentinel or a flag while. If you want to add up or do something in undetermined number of times, it's a sentinel or a flag. Okay. Now, if I don't say in the problem which to use, either sentinel or a flag, then you can use either one. But if I tell you which one, then you need to do it that way. All right. However, I may not tell you what type of while, either counter or sentinel. You'll have to determine that by the way the problem's written. And I just told you, if it doesn't tell you how many, you know it has to be a sentinel flag while. Okay. Now, these while loops work the same in all programming languages. The syntax may be a little off. It may not have a colon here, and it may have parentheses, but they all work the same. So once you get this basic algorithm for these while loops, these two kinds of loops, they're the same in every programming language, okay? And they work the same as well. Any problems in general with while loops? Okay. Let's go back and let's write our grade one. And let's say I don't know how many grades there are. Originally, I had 3 grades, but now I need to know how many. I can either ask the user, and let's say the user doesn't know. They just have a stack of grades they have to enter, and they haven't counted them. So I don't know how many. I need to have some sort of sentinel or flag. I'm going to use the flag, and I'll use -99 because hopefully no student would have a grade of -99. Remember, the flag has to be some value that wouldn't be valid for that particular variable. Okay? So we're going to assume no student will have a -99 grade. All right. So the first thing I have to do is I'm going to do their average. So I'm going to have to add them up. And I'm going to ask the user, okay, for the grade. How to quit. Now be sure to tell them how to quit or they won't know what to do. Okay, they'll just keep entering grades. I'm going to check while grade not equal to -99. I know that I want to add all the grades up. Now this is a little shortcut. I type this, and you can still do that. But usually when you're just doing quick little additions like that or subtractions, you can do shortcuts called Augmented Operators, and it does the same thing. I don't care what you use, but just recognize that on a quiz, if I write some code, I may do that. Okay? That just means total equal total plus grade. All right. So I'm going to add it up. Now remember what we have to do. We have to read or set the sentinel, check the sentinel, and read again. So I'm just going to copy that again. Right. And this will let me enter as many grades as I want. That, so I'm going to 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, and finished. Okay, now remember I just printed the total, that's not the average. So if I want to calculate the average, what am I going to have to do? Total divided by something, but I don't have anything to divide it to because I don't know how many times they went through the loop. So I've got to have some mechanism for doing that. I can have a variable, number of grades, okay, and set it to 0. And every time they walk through the loop, I can add 1 to number of grades. Right? And now I have something I can divide by. Once you learn to use a counter, you use it for lots of things. All right, you'll use it for lots of things. And I'm going to use the shortcut here. I want to add 1 to that. There you go. Okay. You don't have to use the shortcut. Just be able to recognize it when it is used. So I've come in and I enter a grade. Assuming it's not minus 99, I can add it to the number of grades. So now I'm at 1, and I add the total, and I ask for another grade. If he doesn't enter minus 99, I'll add 1 to the grades. Now I'm at 2 grades, and I add the second grade and I ask for another one. All right, so that's how that's going to work. Let's see. So 90, 80, 70. Let's keep it short so we know we can. Is correct. Okay. When you add things up like this, it's an accumulator algorithm. Notice our algorithm. We always set everything to 0 and we add to it. That's pretty much the algorithm itself. Okay. And that's used for any number of things. All right. Notice the algorithm for the while. Read, check, and read. Okay. It all depends on what you need to do. Okay. And this will run for as many grades as I would like to enter. And this is a more generic algorithm than this. This only works for 3 grades. This will work for any number of grades. Therefore, more generic. Okay. Be sure and always tell the user what it takes to get out of the loop. If you don't, they're not going to know for sure how to do that. Okay. Any problems, anything. All right. Let's look at the first problem in that chapter. It's listed on the modules as problems to work on. Let's look at number 1. I'm going to collect bugs for 5 days. Write a loop to collect the number of bugs and add them all up. All right, we should be able to do this one fairly easy. I'm going to close that one. All right. I want 5 bugs. Or 5. Easy enough. So they told me exactly how many days, right? So I already know it can be a counter while because I know how many there are. I want to total them up. So my algorithm for accumulating anything is I have to have a variable set to 0. Right? I'm going to set my counter. I'm going to check my counter. And the number of bugs. I'm going to change my counter. They just told us to print the number of bugs. 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, what did I print? Oh, I printed numbered. I didn't even total them up. You got to total them up or you're not going to get anywhere. Plus equal number. Yes. And then print total. Good point. Don't forget the algorithm. Set it to 0, but you do have to add to it. Okay. Now, there we go. Okay. Let's enter in here, enter number of bugs for day 1. we have the counter. We're going to have to turn it into a string. Day 1. Oh. There. Okay. Okay. So we've learned to turn a number into a string to print it if we want to concatenate it with another string. We've learned augmented operators. By the way, there's not just plus equals, there's minus equals, times equals, divide equals. It works on all of them. There's a little table in that chapter that talks about it. As I said, you don't have to use them if you don't want to, but just recognize them when I use them. Okay. We've learned counter while and sentinel while. Okay. How would I write this if I didn't know how many bug days I wanted to count? I'd have to use a sentinel while. I'd still need my total. Okay. I'd have to read in the number of bugs for that day. So number equals check while number not equal to, we'll say -1. Surely you wouldn't enter a -1 bug. Okay, let me do it. Okay. And then basically the same as total plus equals number. And read again. You want to make sure that you can go back and forth. You understand the difference and you know how to write those short algorithms for those. Okay. And basically recognize them on a quiz. So I could say, which one of these is a sentinel loop? And you'd have to pick the one, right, from the multiple choice. Which one of these is a counter? All right. I have a problem, like I want to read in 5 days of bugs or something like that, or 5 days of cells. Which one of these while loops will do that? So you'd have to select the correct while loop, okay? Those are the types of things that you would see on a quiz. Okay? Any problems with those? Now we're going to spend the rest of the semester writing while loops, and some others we're going to write today as well. So you don't have to learn it, get it all straight in one day, all right? Let's look at the homework. I had posted it over the weekend. Let's look at number 1. Okay. An online retailer sells 5 products, and here's the prices. I say use a for loop here, but we'll do that in a little bit. Here's the one. Use a counter while. I know it's a counter while because there's 5 products. Okay, so let's write this with a while loop. Okay, so I want to have some sort of value for all of those, so I'm going to put that in total. I know how many there are, so I can do a straight counter loop. I know that there's less than 5 of them, 5, less than 6 of them. Okay, so I'm going to read in the quantity. What did I ask for the words? This thing here. Enter quantity sold of product, whatever. Okay, let's make sure we do that. Sold of product. For the product number, so that's counter, and I have to convert it to a string. A colon after that. Yes, a colon after that. Okay. Right. Doggone it. There. Okay. All right, so I'm going to enter the quantity. Now I need to calculate the value of that quantity, and they've already told me that product 1 is $2.98, product 2 is $4.50. So you might want to do something like, if counter equals 1, I know it's product 1. And actually, you could have called your counter product. You could have said this was product, but it doesn't really matter. You would say something like total equals total plus times, what's the value of product 1? $2.98. Total. This time we'll use the augmented operator. It was $4.50. Yeah. Etc. Right? And then at some point you'd come out here and you would print the answer. All right. I'll say print total, but you'll have to make it look pretty. Like that. Total something, something, something. Okay. Only other thing I need to do, remember for your counter while, set, check, change. So it can go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. All right. So you're looking at something like that for part of number 1. Okay. If you don't know where to start, just set up the counter itself. You got to check it. You know somewhere in here you've got to change it. All right, so that's the structure. Then you know you have to have a total because it said add all that stuff up, so you've got to have that somewhere. Start with the simplest part of the algorithm and just fill in the things as you go. Okay. But you're looking at something like that. This is not completed, so you'd have to complete all of that and format it. Okay. Okay. We know how to do a counter while. Okay. You know how to do the sentinel while. Whenever you're looking for your sentinel. Basically do anything you need to do now, looping in a program with any combination of those two. But there is a third kind of loop, and this is the one we mostly use more than anything else for counting things that we need to do, and that's a for loop. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to redo this counter loop. Let's do it and then we'll talk about it. Okay. Actually, let me put this down here so I can comment all that other stuff out. Okay. All right. So this is a for loop. It's the same as a counter while. They are interchangeable. Okay. But let's see what this one does. This one was going to count 1 through 5. Okay, let's see what this one does. Well, it only counts to 4. Okay, it only counts to 4. That's because this is the ending value. It's not used in the loop. So if I want to count to 5, I've got to say 6. Okay, I've got to say 6. The first number is the number you'll start with. The second number is the number you will end with, except it will not be used. Okay. Let's say I wanted to count to 5 and just do that. Well, that starts at 0 and goes to 4, but there's 5 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It counts 5 times, but the values are 0 through 4. So if I wanted to use the counter and actually count correctly the way I'm used to, I'd have to do 1 to 6. Okay. Now, this does everything the while loop did. It set the counter, it set it at 1. It checked the counter, it checked it automatically when it came through the loop, and it incremented it automatically when it came through the loop. So it set it at 1, it walked through the loop, it added 1 to it, it became 2. Is 2 less than 6? Yes. Did it? Added another one, 3 less than 6, all the way up to 6 less than 6, which is no, and stopped. So it did everything the while counter did. Okay, I just didn't have to write all the code for it. But you must remember, I have one number here. It's going to start at 0 and go to 1 less. So if I wanted to do 5 loops, with this one, oh, it does 6 loops, but it starts at 0. Okay, it'll do 6 loops, but it'll start with 0. If I want 5, I can have 5 loops, but it starts with 0. All right, but if I want the numbers, the actual numbers, I've got to put, right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Depends on what range you're looking for. Let's look at the homework and rewrite this as a for loop, because that's what I asked you to do for the first time. Let me go see where we wrote that. Didn't we do that? Here it is. Okay, so this is the one we did with the while loop. Right. I want to redo it as a for loop. I still need the total variable. Now I'm going to turn everything into 4. For counter in range. Okay. I have 5 products, so I need it to loop 5 times. All right. But I do want to use the variable and print it out. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And the rest of this stuff, same. Okay. I just don't have to increment the counter. Those are interchangeable. Now that's another good question that I can have on the quiz. I could give you a loop like this and say which one of these is the equivalent for loop, and you'd have to select the correct for loop. Or I could give you the for loop and say what's the correct while loop. So make sure that you can go back between a counter while and a for loop. They're the same. Right? Just one's easier to write than the other. All right. Let's see what else you can do in a for loop. All right. What would this do? Well, I know it's going to start with 1, and it's going to go to less than 10. Let's see what happens. So I'll get 13579. Started at 1, but it incremented with 2. Notice in our while loops, we've always incremented with 1, but you can increment with anything you want. So this way, I can get odd numbers. How would I get even numbers? I could start. There you go, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this increment can be anything you want. That was the increment here. And I can do the same thing with the while loop. I can do the evens or odds and so forth. This. We can count backwards. There you go. We started at 197.94 all the way down to 4. All right. I said go to 2, but it won't do 2, remember. It'll know the last one that was a -3 on it. Yeah. So I can go forwards, backwards by any number I want. Okay. Increment, decrement, whatever works on the for loop. Remember, I could write all of these as the same while loop, which would be a good exercise. You might see those again written as a while loop somewhere else. Okay, that would be a good exercise for you to work on. Now, you'll notice in chapter 4 that he starts for loops with something called a list. We are not doing that. We're not doing lists until chapter 7. Do not do a list on any homework or you won't get credit for it. Okay? He introduced all that stuff too early. We're only going to do the types of things that we've covered here. There will be no lists for the homework. Okay? So skip that section in the book. It's just a couple of pages, I think. Okay? Any problems? Let's go look in the book. Let's look at number 2. Now, these are listed under the modules for programs to work. I can burn 4.2 calories a minute. Write a program that loops to display the number of calories burned after 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Okay, so he doesn't tell you what kind of loop. We're going to do it both ways. So if I were going to use a while loop, what type of while loop would I use? Is this a counter while or a flag sentinel while? Well, he actually tells me the values. When they tell you what the values are, you know, okay, that you can use a counter while. Not only that, look, what's the difference between all those numbers? 5. He's incrementing by 5 every time. So let's write this as a while loop. Okay, let's see. I know that I have a counter. Now, what does the counter start with? Starts with 10. That's the first one he gives. So counter starts with 10. While counter less than or equal to, what's the last number? 30. I just need to print out calories burned. And it is counter times 4.2. I'm a counter, so I need to count. I need to change the counter. What's my increment? It was 5. There you go. Okay. Let's try printing this a different way. Let's do this. And on the next line, I'm going to print the calculation. Oh, I took out my, I accidentally took out my incrementer. Golly. Notice that everything comes on a separate line. Every print brings a new carriage return line feed. I would like to print in my code this way, but I'd like it to be on one line. I'd still like it to look. Oh, can't get all the way back up. Doesn't really matter, I guess. Oh, I'd still like it to look like this, okay? Even though I want to write it in my code on separate lines. Every print is a carriage return line feed. I don't want that to happen. So what you can do is you can come in here and you can say end equals nothing. This is nothing in between the two quotes. This is like sep equals nothing, end equals nothing. End says when you get to the end of this print, don't do a carriage return line feed. So let's look at that. And there I don't. I need a space here so it looks nice. But they all end up on the same line, even though I had two print statements. Okay? End always says don't do a carriage return line feed. Unless you want to do something else in here. We're not going to do anything else in the quotes. This is always blank to us. Okay? So if I wanted to print, you know, something else after here, free line, I'd come up here and I'd say end equals what that does. There you go. Spacing isn't too good, but well, there you go. All right. End will make it so that you cannot get a carriage return line feed on those print statements. And sometimes this comes in handy, especially if you're trying to print something really long and you just don't have enough space in your editor to do it. You can do different print statements and just put this at the end of the ones that you want to continue with. All right. Let's rewrite this as a for loop. So I know that for x in range. Now, what are my conditions? I start with 10. I have to use 30, so I have to be less than 31. And I'm going to increment by 5. Remember, it won't do whatever number you put here. So if I put 30, it wouldn't do 30. But if I put 31, it'll do 30. Okay? Okay. And I want to just print. I'll comment that one. Not there. Get that out. Oh, it's not counter, it's X. There we go. I'm going to change that to counter. Either way, as long as they're the same. There you go. Okay. You want to be able to go back and forth between for loops and while loops. Now, if I give you a sentinel while, you can't do that in a for loop. But at least you're not going to do it this semester. That's different code in a style that I don't like, so we're not going to do those types of things. Okay. By the way, when he talks about while loops and for loops and all this, he has things like break and continue. you can use those statements, which means break the loop and get out of it or continue or things like, we're not going to use these. I don't ever want to see those used, okay? Do not use. If you're writing your code from scratch and you're writing it yourself, you can write it in a much better way than using breaks and continues. Out in the real world, you'll see break and continues used, okay? For us, we're not going to do that. So make sure you don't ever use any of those in your code. Misspelled calories. Okay. So what you want to do then is, we haven't done enough to do the next pieces of the homework, except for the fact that you can write up the formulas. These formulas we've already done, so you should have them in your notes. Okay. By next week, you'll know how to do all the rest of the homework. All right. And then we're going to do files. Files are very easy. All right. But the only one we can do right now is number 1. I would recommend looking at the others, make sure you have any questions, things like that. Okay. So that you can go to the lab hours or whatever you need for that. By next week, you'll know how to do the rest of them. All right. Are there any questions about while loops and for loops? As I said, we're going to spend the next couple of weeks just doing this type of stuff on all our coding and everything. I have extra problems in the module, and we will finish those next week. And we'll start back up with our worksheets next week as well.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So my question was on the homework, there were A and B. Did you want us to kind of like break that up? So it would be comment problem 1, comment A, comment B?
Yeah, you can do that. You can just say problem 1A, problem 1B, whichever.
Okay, yeah. And then my second question was, because they kind of looked weird, so it was like problem 1A looked different than problem 1B. So did you want us to have 2 different codes for that? Or
yeah,
would be
absolutely. I just wrote. Yeah.
You just wrote the first for problem A, right? Okay. I just want to make sure because I was a little.
Yeah. Well, the first one I wrote was problem B.
Okay.
The second one was A, because I say use a for loop and then I say use a while loop. So there's 2 different ways to do it. Yes.
Okay, and you want us to show them both. Okay.
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we're still working on grading the homework. Hopefully that'll get done in the next few days. So hang in there and everything. If you have any questions, I'll have office hours today, and she'll have her lab hours next week as well. Other than that, I think that's probably enough for today. So hopefully y'all are in good weather conditions. If not, just stay warm then. And hopefully, I'd love some snow, but I don't guess we're going to get snow or anything. Okay. Anybody got any questions, any issues, anything? Okay. Y'all have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next week.